this is Liz Reed with Just Believe Coaching, and welcome to my video series on how to quickly turn your marriage around. On today's video, we're going to cover focus factor. So ladies, my question to you is, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on everything your husband is doing wrong? If so, stop. Stop focusing on everything he's doing wrong. We're going to look at a new way to go about this. And we're going to begin focusing in on your husband's strengths. And when I say strengths, I mean things that he's doing well or right in the relationship. Now you may be thinking, my husband's not doing anything right in the relationship. That's not true. If your husband has a good heart, and let me tell you what I mean when I say good heart. If your husband loves you, he wants to be in the relationship with you, he wants to have a good relationship with you, and you know that if you really think about it, he's a good guy, then he has a good heart, okay? And he's doing something right in the relationship. This video is for you. Now, if you're in any type of abusive situation, this video is not for you. So I advise you now to please contact someone that can help you, that can assist you, get counseling further. This video is not for you. This video is for ladies who just want to enhance the quality of their marriage. And when you ask yourself that question, does my husband have a genuinely good heart? You can say yes. Okay, let's move forward. So we want to focus in on our spouse's strengths. What is he doing right in the relationship? In our first video, we covered speaking life over the relationship. But if you're speaking life over the relationship and you're still focusing in on everything you believe your husband is doing wrong, it's going to cancel out all the work that you're doing in speaking life. So I want you to begin thinking about, what does he do well in the relationship? And this could be something small. It doesn't have to be something, big and miraculous. It can be something small. And preferably, I would have you identify the smaller things that are taking place in the relationship. Because it's the little things that occur day in and day out in the relationship that you can begin to acknowledge that your husband is doing well. It's those things that actually begin to affect the relationship, the little things. I want to share a little client story with you about focus factor. I had a client who came to me and pretty much everything that her husband did was wrong. I mean, she had a really difficult time in identifying anything that he was doing right. And I told her, like I'm telling you now, I asked her the question, does your husband have a good heart? And I explained to her what that meant, and she said yes. I said, okay, then there's something that he's doing right. We just have to identify what it is. Many times what happens in relationship is that we begin to focus on these things that our spouses are doing wrong. And when I say focus, I mean we laser in on the things that they're doing wrong. And so we have a wrong perspective of the relationship, and then we begin to cultivate this spirit of ungratefulness because we can't find anything that they're doing right. So what we have to do is we have to shift our perspective. And that's what we did with this client. So we began to go down this path of identifying the things that our husband was doing right. And in the beginning, it was a process, okay? But eventually, she began to identify all of these ways in which her husband was truly doing things right. He was doing wonderful things on her behalf. And she began to feel grateful for these things. And she began to acknowledge these things. And then her relationship began to change. It began to flourish. So she began to go down this process. But then I noticed that something was happening in the relationship, and she would come to the coaching session and she was not happy and she was down. And so I asked her, I said, what are you focusing on? And she said, well, my husband's doing this and he won't do this for me. And I said, oh, okay, so you're focusing in on all the things that he's doing wrong. And she had to admit that yes, she was. So then we went back through the process of identifying all the ways in which her husband was actually blessing her in the relationship, the ways in which he was doing things right. And as she began to focus in on those and to be grateful for those things and to acknowledge those things, her relationship began to change. Let me tell you a little story from my own life. Several years ago, I was working at a job that required me to commute about an hour and a half away from my home. And I would get sick a lot at work. And the reason I was getting sick was because I wasn't eating in the morning. I'm not a morning person, and breakfast makes me sick in the morning. It makes me nauseous. And so my husband began to notice what was happening. So he started to get up earlier than I did to fix my breakfast, and he prepared me a meal to eat on the commute to work. He did this every day for me. And it was such a thoughtful thing for him to do. I didn't ask him to do it, and he just took it upon himself to do that for me. And that was such a blessing to the relationship. That was several years ago, and even now when I think about it, it still blesses me. So it's the little things that are actually going to make or break your relationship. And that's why it's important that we have the right perspective, that we begin to focus in on our husband's strengths, and that we begin to acknowledge them and to feel grateful for them. Now let me tell you what's going to happen as you begin to do this. What's going to happen is that you're going to cultivate an environment for change to take place in the relationship. So if your husband right now is focusing in on your weaknesses, with you beginning to focus in on his strengths, it's going to create an environment for him to begin focusing in on your strengths. So you'll have his strengths meeting your strengths, coming together and creating something wonderful in your relationship. His strengths and your strengths coming together and creating a life and relationship that you truly love. So here are the steps that we need to begin to take. Focus in on his strengths. Begin to feel grateful for the strengths, for the things that he's doing right in the relationship. Then begin to acknowledge those strengths to your spouse. And as you do that, it's going to change the quality of your relationship. Ladies, I want to thank you for watching today. Now, if you feel like in your heart that this is something that you need help with, you don't feel like you could do this by yourself, if that's you today, I want you to go to my website and sign up for my complimentary Fall in Love Again discovery session. There you can learn about how I actually come alongside you in my Fall in Love Again program. And we work with this strategy and many other strategies that will quickly help you create the life and the relationship that you've always dreamed about. Now while you're there, please go to my tab titled Freebies and download a copy of my 10 Tips to Radical Communication Almost Overnight. I want to thank you for watching. And as always, please remember, don't be afraid, just believe.